All right, next question is about antibiotic impregnated shunts, so very topical. So just to tell you about this, so these are shunt catheters that have been at the manufacturers impregnated with antibiotics. And when you implant these, the catheters themselves, so the part that goes into the brain and possibly the part that goes down into the belly, have this impregnation on them, but the valve itself does not. Okay, so the valve that we put in between those two catheters is not impregnated with the antibiotics. There's no randomized data yet on this, so we don't have sort of the best study yet to show whether this actually helps reduce the rate of infections or not. But there's a number of studies that are what we call observational studies. They're not the randomized trials. And I think if you look at the totality of these, there's some conflicting results, but I think they do suggest, on average, a slight degree of improvement in infection rate with the antibiotic impregnated catheters versus not. What we found when we've looked at this in our hydrocephalus research network, when we started, we put in shunts specifically without the antibiotic impregnated catheters. And what we did instead was we gave antibiotics at the time of surgery, and then we actually injected antibiotics into the shunt itself when we finished the operation. So we found that had a certain infection rate. And then we changed our protocol so that we stopped injecting the antibiotics and instead put in these antibiotic impregnated catheters, which are more expensive, by the way. And when we did that, we found that the infection rate was basically the same. So either of the two protocols that we used, one that didn't involve the antibiotic impregnated catheters but did involve injection of antibiotics, led to a similar infection rate as with using the antibiotic impregnated shunts. I think the best study on this is one that's ongoing right now. It's in the United Kingdom. They're doing a really nice national study that's a 3-arm randomized trial that will compare just regular shunt catheters to these antibiotic impregnated catheters to silver impregnated catheters as well. That's another type of catheter to try to reduce infection. So it's a 3-arm randomized trial. It's a very large study. They're in the sort of relatively early stages of it right now, so it's going to be a while before we get those results, but I think that will give us the best answer to this question. I'm expecting those are still going to be a few years away. Anything to add from your side?
You know, we really need somebody in the adult world who's doing the degree of research that you and your group are doing through the Hydrocephalus Research Network, because they're collecting excellent data in children. We know the natural history of shunts in kids. We know the natural history of ETV in kids. We now are starting to understand the role of these catheters in kids, and we don't have equivalent data in adults right now. So right now, as I said, the best studies have been done in kids. Our sense right now is that they're not conclusively better than regular shunts. It's uncertain, particularly in this age of cost consciousness, whether it's worth the extra cost of putting an antibiotic impregnating catheter into an adult. We certainly consider it in somebody who presents with frequent shunt infections. But we're hoping that the data will emerge over time that will allow us to make sensible decisions. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter how expensive it is, if it stops repeated infections, the long range would be that it would be cheaper to be doing that than to be doing, and certainly safer than to be doing multiple operations.